All right, man. We got another double upload day because there's a bunch of news, alleged backstage drama. The Rock allegedly tried to take Triple H's job. You know what I'm saying? All that stuff. I want to confirm though, okay? Most of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this video is actually factual. You can go either watch the podcast or I'm going to show images of what I'm talking about on the screen. So I'll have actual evidence for most of the stuff I'm talking about. And then obviously some of this is rumors and speculation. It's not clickbait. Most of this stuff is going to be accurate and you can look up the videos and the evidence yourselves. And if you can't, I'll just link it. You can just DM me on Instagram or email me, whatever. I'll send you the links to whatever you need. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what's happening. Basically, what's happening is that there's a bunch of egos in the way, a lot of creative clashing backstage, apparently, between The Rock and between Triple H and between WWE Creative. You have also the fact that Bayley now is coming out and talking about the fact that, what happened recently with WrestleMania. She feels like her kindness is kind of being taken advantage of in a sense, which isn't a feeling. It's what's actually happening. That's why Becky Lynch basically came back and knocked her out of Mania. And Dr. Libations, Cody Rhodes, there were some things said about him by a backstage talent, which we'll talk about, a little bit later in this video, okay? I'm sticking up for my boy Cody Rhodes, so you know what I'm saying? He ain't my boy, but the stuff that was said about Cody Rhodes, I don't agree with, and you know what? We're going to talk about that later in the video as well. So yes, you'll be seeing me defending Dr. Libations for the first time in a very long time. And also, most of the creative clashing and the rumors and stuff I've said already are probably true simply because of the fact that when you have creative clashing and egos clashing backstage, usually the product suffers as a result of it. We see this in big movie industries. We see this now in wrestling. If you have creative clashes at the top, the people who are running the company and running the organization, you ultimately are going to get a bad product. Hence why the fans are super upset with Mania 41 being very lackluster and just straight up bad, and the Mania season and build leading up to it being atrocious. Now, obviously, we have to talk about The Rock. The Rock basically seems to slowly but surely have some sort of, tension, I would say, with Triple H backstage is the nicest way to put it, with Triple H being the head of creative. As we all know, The Rock was not on WrestleMania Night 2, as we all expected him to come out there and help Cena beat Cody and win the championship. And The Rock obviously could have been there if he really wanted to be there. If he could show up last week like 8 or 9 times leading into Mania 40 as one of the busiest celebrities on the planet, there's no reason why he couldn't show up more than one time in this entire Mania build. It's ridiculous, and we know he could have been there because he randomly, after the insane backlash that Mania 41 got, The Rock showed up on Pat McAfee's show today to do some damage control after the disaster that happened this weekend. And because of this, The Rock showed up on this, which lets you know, and he was in his house too on a Zoom call, so that lets you know that he probably could have shown up to Mania if he really wanted to, but it just didn't happen. But the fact is that at Triple H's Hall of Fame speech and at WrestleMania, any of this stuff over the weekend, Triple H has not mentioned The Rock at all, and The Rock has barely been brought up during this Mania build. And also, we have to bring up the fact that The Rock hasn't been mentioned really by anybody except for maybe Cena or Cody one time since that Chamber heel turn for Cena. So that's something to keep in mind as I go into this next part. The WrestleMania season ticket sales, this is all being said by The Rock on Pat McAfee's show, so you can go watch the footage yourself. The WrestleMania ticket sales in terms of the Chamber sales and the week-to-week shows and stuff like that were getting low. And this is obviously evident. We saw the proof a week ago, 7 days before Mania. They were struggling to sell tickets in a 60,000 person stadium. They were struggling to get 50K. And then obviously they lied about it at Mania, saying there were 63,000, even though that's not even possible, right? They lied about the sellout numbers both nights. But anyways, so that's factual. And they needed something big, and they wanted something to reignite Elimination Chamber and also bring hype and, inject some energy into this Mania season. So they hit up The Rock, WWE, Triple H, TKO, the creative. They got with The Rock, and they wanted The Rock to come up with something big. And his idea was for Cody to turn heel and sell his soul to The Rock. That's why we got that segment on SmackDown. But Triple H and Cody Rhodes, it's unclear which one of them, or if it was both of them, didn't want Cody as the face of the company, the current face of the company as a face, to turn heel. And I guess that's understandable, right? So John Cena, who originally probably wasn't planned to turn heel, and we know this because you can see when he was doing his tour in Europe, he had multiple different wristband and armband and color attires for each specific week. So this was planned out in advance for him to have these multiple different colors for these different showings across the world, because he was probably going to be a good guy and help sell multiple amounts of merch to different places in different markets. So that's that. But Cena ended up being the one that turned heel, as we all saw it. And John Cena ended up winning the 17th championship, but The Rock said today on the show that if Cena won the 17th championship and The Rock was in charge, The Rock would have booked it different than what Triple H and the creative did, which is kind of a shot at the booking, considering how bad the booking was for night 2 and how what Triple H wanted to happen sucked. So I guess The Rock can now say, if I was doing it, it would have been different and it could have been better. But the point is, The Rock not showing up at night 2 when he probably could have lets you know that there could be a potential scenario where the final boss, my boy The Rock, sabotaged the whole Mania season potentially since the Chamber era when he had Cody do the Sell the Soul thing and Cena turned heel in order to maybe make Triple H look worse or look bad by not continuing on a storyline that The Rock started himself. It's just a possibility. I'm throwing it out there. It could be possible. And how could The Rock not be there for Mania, but then one day later, or like 30 hours later, he's showing up for a 40-minute segment on the Pat McAfee show? You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't add up. If The Rock knew that he was going to lay down a story and wasn't going to finish it, why would he do it in the first place? It was either something that TKO wanted him to do to sell tickets and, provide intrigue for the shows and stuff like that, or the simple truth is that, The Rock had an idea, and maybe he had other obligations, which he mentioned in the show. Maybe that was it. Or him and Triple H couldn't get along on creative and they disagreed on what to do. So The Rock figured, you know what? I'm going to do a power play and not show up, and you're going to figure out how to make this great without me, which Triple H ultimately failed miserably at WrestleMania 41. So something is wrong. I don't know what's going on, but everything here looks pretty fishy. So who knows what's happening with this, but that's the situation with The Rock and Triple H and an alleged power struggle and creative struggle that's happening backstage and issues with that. Also, The Rock did reveal that he has been texting Seth Rollins behind the scenes, and Seth Rollins is open to doing a Sell the Soul to The Rock storyline for a WWE title or things of that nature, and because of that, right, it's led to heavy speculation, and The Rock said himself he's going to dive into that story with Seth Rollins. So we probably might get Seth as WWE champion within the next year, or world champ as selling his soul out to The Rock. So just stay tuned for that. That's interesting. Next, we have to talk about Dr. Libations. I quickly want to say Cody Rhodes obviously left AEW because he started to get booed in a company and promotion that he started, you understand? And because of that, Cody getting booed, it made him leave the company and he was upset and all that stuff. So he came back to WWE. And now that he is getting booed, at least he was recently in this Cena feud, I don't think it will continue. I hope it doesn't for his sake, you know what I'm saying? If it continues, I do believe that Cody Rhodes could potentially either turn heel or he may leave the company again. I think the better option is for him to turn heel. I think that's what he likely will do, because you can't go from here back to AEW. That would just look horrible for the guy. So I think he will turn heel soon. And The Rock talked about today in his interview the fact that Cody Rhodes has been, him turning heel and selling out to The Rock is something that will be revisited at some point. The Rock said it himself. You can look at his interview. Now, we have to talk about the roast of WrestleMania, which wasn't aired. It wasn't televised. So we only have fan accounts of what happened at the show. But multiple accounts have concurred that Nia Jax went off the rails during this, and this might be part of the reason we haven't seen her is because she's been, fiddling around and doing some negative stuff backstage. So she basically says, I have the screenshot here of the fan account. She basically was talking about the fact, and I think she said Charlotte has more faces than WrestleMania because of her Botox surgery, which is just very rude to Charlotte. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of crazy. And then she also basically said that Cody Rhodes' kindness and genuineness is a bit fake, and that Cody's kind of a fake good guy. And on top of that, she even went on to discuss things about Becky Lynch and how some of her tweets when she was in the Man Run back in like 6 years ago or whatnot, some of those tweets were written by other people besides herself to make her look better in the Man Run as one of the top people in the company. Nia Jax is just throwing blows at basically everybody, but quite frankly, I think this is absolutely insane. There's no way, right? I don't know Cody Rhodes personally. You know what I'm saying? I bashed his title reign because it did suck, and he is a mid-carder pretending to be a main eventer. However, Cody Rhodes being disingenuous and, being a fake good guy, I mean, come on, man. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. I will say there were allegations of this when he was leaving AEW and got booed out of there as well, so I don't know what's happening with that. You know what I mean? That's none of my business. I don't know what's going on with him or Tony Khan or whatever, but this allegation coming from Nia Jax, who did also bring up Becky Lynch kind of politicking a little bit, and now you look at what's happening with Bayley, and Bayley did get politicked out at Mania by Becky Lynch. There could be some validity to these statements. There's a little bit of truth in every lie, you know what I'm saying? At least that's what the old heads say, the unks out there, they be saying. I've heard multiple older people say that, so, it is what it is. You never know. But the situation with Cody apparently being quote-unquote disingenuous and basically a fake good guy is a very weird allegation that also lines up with what Nia was saying about Becky Lynch, and Becky Lynch is doing what Nia was saying, so maybe Cody could be a fake good guy, but I doubt it. I do think that Dr. Libations is a great guy, a good family man, and he seems to be a pretty solid dude in front of the scene, in front of the camera and behind the camera. So, I don't know about the validity to this, but that's just something that Nia Jax said, so I had to cover it. Then we also have to talk about, which is, I think this is one of the last stories to discuss in this video. Bayley was on Chris Van Vliet. Shout out Chris Van Vliet. You know what I'm saying? That dude's a goated podcaster. I love listening to Chris Van Vliet. But anyways, Bayley basically went on that podcast, okay? okay? And she was basically being questioned about, this is right before Mania. This is at Mania week last week, you know what I'm saying? And she was basically saying, in a sense, that her kindness and her lack of ego to not, quote unquote, literally said it herself, push down the door and demand, better, or demand, hey, I'm Bayley. I deserve to do this. Why would I do that? I want to take control. I want to do I want to do it how I want to do it. These are words from her. She says that lack of ego and stuff has gotten her to be taken advantage of in a certain sense. When you look at what's happened with this WrestleMania run, Becky Lynch, gets to come in, return after however long she's been off the last year or so, and just take someone else's WrestleMania spot because she's Becky Lynch. That's straight politicking, and it takes away Bayley's spot that had been built up at least for a few weeks. Her story with Lyra versus Liv and Raquel for Mania, the original match. It's kind of very shady and it's very shaky, and I do feel bad for Bayley because apparently, I don't think this is apparent. I think we all know this. Charlotte and Becky Lynch be politicking. You know what I'm saying? They be politicking, bro. That's why Naomi and Sasha Banks walked out on WWE a couple years ago, because of how crazy the politicking is from Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. Like, they basically got to just do whatever they wanted and take other people's spots at their expense, which is why I do have respect for Charlotte. I respect you. I love you. I need you. I have respect for Charlotte, for doing the job at Mania and, not only out wrestling Tiffany Stratton, who's in her 20s, supposed to be in her prime, but also Charlotte was able to, go down and take the loss to Tiffany Stratton to put Tiffany over. So I thought that was great. That was pretty great of her to do. Pretty selfless, I would say. But the fact is that Bayley saying these things days after, her getting taken off the Mania card. And she was referencing how, last year, how she won the Rumble and, she had the Mania, she had the Mania moment with Io and won the belt. And then there was nothing next for her. Like, they gave her nothing really to work with and then had her lose the belt to Nia Jax. And you look at that, and she literally mentioned in the interview today, she's like, you know what? By the time this interview comes out, there's going to be some other stuff as well, obviously alluding to the fact that Becky came in and took her spot probably like a day or two after that interview was recorded. So it's very interesting. There is so much drama and so much craziness taking place right now. I wanted to discuss this and cover this because this is some pretty serious stuff. When you start dealing with power dynamics and egos and power struggles and, creative issues, all of this is bad for the fans because at the end of the day, we get a bad product because of all the miscommunications and the disconnections at the start of the company, at the heads of the company. If they're not coinciding and they're not working well together, then we're not going to get a product that flows smoothly and that is actually entertaining and good. Hence why this Mania season has been so awful. Okay, so that's the situation with that. But with that being said, I think that's pretty much all the news that needs to be covered. We have rumors of The Rock and his power struggle with Triple H, Cody Rhodes allegedly being disingenuous, which my boy Dr. Libations ain't disingenuous. Let's be real here, y'all. And then obviously the politicking from Bayley and or the politicking from Becky Lynch and what Nia Jax said. Nia Jax is probably going to get fired soon, of course. And then we have the stuff with Bayley as well. Her discontent with the fact that she's kind of being taken advantage of and sidelined when she doesn't really know what else she needs to prove in order to be treated like a Charlotte or a Becky Lynch. So it's a very interesting deal. A lot of this is backed up by evidence and statistics and the fact that the product sucks over the last few months, you know what I'm saying? So it's all kind of there. You can kind of read through the tea leaves and figure it out yourself. But at the end of the day, we don't have 100% confirmation on every little thing mentioned in this video, so it's good to take it with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, you have to decide at some point whether you're going to believe in something or not believe in it. So I don't know what I believe. I'm just here to report the information because the facts are what the facts are, and whether you love it, you hate it, you like it, you don't like it, you have to shut your mouth and enjoy the ride that C-Jax is taking you on. With that being said, I thank you guys so much for watching. I thank you guys so much for your support. I appreciate you. I thank you. I'm proud of you. I respect you. And because of that, I am here able to make these videos, for you guys. So thank you guys so much. Have a phenomenal day. Peace out and one love.